Jace.
Mate, how good is that? Hey?
All right, mate, just done a few edits to the home studio. What do you reckon?
Mate, I like your upgrade, mate. That is absolutely classic, and good to see we're going next level with the show. Mate, you're dialing in from the sunny Byron Bay, I hear.
Mate, I am indeed. This is the Byron Bay Studios as a part of Kerr and Ray. We've been filming an event over here over the last 3 days. And, mate, just thought we'd have a little bit of fun on the Friday with the studio that was already set up. And, mate, I tell you what, it's a cracking place. And for those people who want to get involved in filming and doing it in a world-class type of environment, then head on down to Byron Bay and catch up with the team at Kerr and Ray, mate. It's pretty special, this studio, I can tell you, mate. I've got you on 17 screens in here, and you look as good in every one of these screens
larger than life
as what you do in real life, I can tell you.
Well, that's fantastic. I wonder if you could have a little snapshot of around the room a bit later on anyway, but it'd be kind of cool. But we've got a bunch of people on now, Andy. So welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom team, gang. Good to see you guys here today. If you haven't already noticed, Andy's in a bit of a different location. There it is. Look at that. He's up the ante. Loving it, mate. Loving it. So big shout out and g'day to Alison. And I can see a bunch of others on there. So give us a shout out who's online, where you're dialing in from, team. Welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. Andy Fenton over there. Jason Witten here. And as a few of you guys might know, we've been doing this for quite a while and supporting our community. You guys out there, property investors, investors per se in any asset class, financial planning, business. And Andy and myself have been coming to you guys live most Fridays with a glass of wine, hopefully some wisdom about wealth. And we'll see how we go today. There's plenty to chat about. There's plenty to talk about. We've got Dr. Carl. Or is that Dark Casper? Anyway, hello, Dark Casper. If that's your real name, fabulous. Good to have you here with us tonight, or this evening, or this afternoon, really, depending on where you are. There's Jeff diving in. Yeah, Jeff, we think we might have a little yarn about interest rates tonight, how they may or may not affect us, Andy, as we go along. As you guys may know, if you don't, you should. What we do on the show is we cover 3 little sections in the show, which gives us a little bit of a few things to talk about and pontificate on. What's in the news? Plenty going on there, Andy. I'm pretty keen to chat to you about a few things that have popped up and things you should know. Sometimes we feel like we need to teach a little bit of something. Andy and I have got teaching at the core of our purposes on this planet. And certainly, if anyone has any questions, make sure you put them in the chat, team, and we will circle around to those questions later at the end. Jesse's got a Sauv Blanc. Andy, you look like you've got a rosé.
Well, mates, I'm free. I'm out of Victoria. So for those of you, again, who haven't tuned in before, we started this off at the beginning of the pandemic in order to be able to share insights and also share the real news, not the fake news, not the sensationalist headlines, and help business owners, investors around Australia to navigate what have been extraordinarily challenging times. And, mate, it's a bit of a role reversal now because I'm out, I'm free, I'm here. Where the bloody hell are you, as the slogan goes in Queensland, is mate, very, very difficult to get into your state and get out of your state to get back into it at the moment. Same with WA. But, mate, it's Freedom Day. It's been coined. And I think probably quite commensurate with it. I thought bringing down the wall might have been appropriate as well. But, mate, it's great to be out and about, as I said, in the Byron Bay studios. But, mate, tell you, I'll look forward to be able to cross that border at some point in time. I did hear from a taxi driver or an Uber driver today that it's your constitutional right to be able to walk over the border. apparently that's different to driving over the border. So maybe I might have to have a stroll and come up and see you, mate.
Just get on foot. Many years ago, I had some interesting people that I knew, Andy, talked about common law and other types of law, and they tried it on and it didn't win. So, it's an interesting one. Yeah.
So what I'd really like to know from all of you out there, and you just type it into the chat box and just put a V or an N. So if you're from New South Wales, just whack an N in the chat box right now. I'd love to see if anybody is coming in from New South Wales, recently free. And if you're from Victoria, just put a V in there, a V for victory, just into the chat box right now. I'd love to know who's in from Victoria. So don't keep us in.
I was going to say, are you being statist right now, Andy? Like the other the other states and territories don't matter, or
Well, no, I was just going to say, and we've got Bryce and Alison in there. What the bloody hell are you doing home on a Friday night when you're finally free?
Yeah, haven't you guys got anything better to do? No, but good to see. There's a few in there, Andy.
There is. They must be going out after the show. So thank you for dialing in.
This is the warm up.
Yes,
this is the warm up.
Yes,
well, Alison's celebrating tonight anyway. Yeah, good work, Alison, passing the economics at uni. And I know you've been doing some other studies as well. So great to see that. I'm a big fan, Andy. You and I chat about this all the time when it comes to, I think this is one of these things you should know. Two things that can be an absolute predictor of your future wealth. Number one, the amount of time and length you stay in an invested asset or investing in assets. The longer, the better. There's no other debate in that one, okay? There's just no other debate. Time will win. Time in a market, time in an asset will win, or time investing will win. If some people succeed trading, Andy, you and I both know that. And the other one, the absolute other one, is the continual upgrading of your knowledge. And I just want to acknowledge, Alison, your continual upgrading of your knowledge will equal, in one way, shape, or form, the continual upgrading of your income. And you upgrade your knowledge, you upgrade your income, you upgrade your wealth. So well done, Alison. Great job in that one. Yay.
And if you keep studying economics, you'll be in one of the best jobs you can ever get into, because economics, as we've said many times, Jason, you become an economist, you get paid to be wrong on a regular basis and just come back next month and justify the reason why you made the wrong calls. So it's a sure thing. You can't go wrong, because if you're ever right, you're already in the top 10%.
There you go.
Economics 101, my friend. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Well, Michelle reckons she doesn't have a social life. Probably a bit like me and Andy, to be honest. Andy was let out. And,
I went straight to work.
Exactly. And we've got someone coming in from Karratha. Hot as hell up there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 50 degrees.
Yeah. There you go. Well, mate, why don't we dive into a little bit of what's going on in the news? And I might have a little nibble at a little bit of real estate news. And then I think there's a bit more meat on the bone today, because there's a few things I'd love to talk to you about. And I'm sure you've got one or two things. But, let's have a look at my little sort of 5 cents worth when it comes to the property market, team. A few things happening here, Andy, which I think are quite interesting when it comes to the world of real estate. I do remember, I don't know if you remember the moment a while ago where you and I were talking about the real estate space and people moving from the cities to regional locations.
Yes. And
it's already started to reverse. I don't know. I was sort of saying, the people who are thinking that moving to regional locations is like a romantic notion have probably never lived in a small town or a regional location. And already the change where there is the lack of facilities and infrastructure, people are flowing back into the cities already. Hopefully that doesn't affect those small towns too much. But for me, I wouldn't want to have paid too much in a small town thinking that, this was the boom. You were never going to you were waiting for, because people are already moving back into town as we go.
Multiple different reasons for it, mate. But I've lived in the country for a little while, and mate, it gets pretty tedious, because when you're in and around the city and the local areas, you forget the milk. You just quickly pop out, and that's the reason why they say, I'm just going to pop out and go down and get some milk. Pop out being the P. Like, when you go, I've got to go down the bloody street again because I forgot the damn milk, and it's a 15-minute drive down there, or a 10-minute drive. It's a bit of an escapade, and the internet is a big one. And we spoke about this in the beginning, is that the infrastructure really isn't there in order to be able to make sure that you can have those types of meetings. And also we were sort of quoting, albeit now almost 2 years ago, one of the largest global property investors in the world. It was with the city prices falling in places like New York and all of these cities which actually had momentary price slumps. He was basically saying, look, we've seen this before. We've seen it ever since the Roman days, but people will congregate and they will come back in order to do exactly the same things that they did before.
Totally. Yep.
And I think that we will see that, and there's opportunity in that. But you've always got to take the bet if you want to be able to ride that wave. But there is opportunity in the short term sometimes.
Yeah, and if you can be in and out, and you and I have talked about the cost and the risk, or the lack of liquidity in real estate. That word liquidity sometimes is misunderstood. Well, I think often is misunderstood. But the idea that you can get in and out of some investment in a timely manner quite fast and at your own choosing, real estate is not that, Andy. Both you and I know it's slow, it's cumbersome. Even if you wanted to go fast, it'd be 30, 60, 90 days at breakneck pace, and sometimes 3, 6, 12 months if it's not a piece of real estate that someone wants to buy. Unlike the share market or other things, literally, touch of a button and you got your money. So,
Yes.
being in and out of real estate, trading, you've got to kind of be in it to win it. And, maybe you have to wait as well. If you missed your window, sometimes you're stuck there, or you got to, take a haircut on the price of things as you go. So, but I think
look, there might be some interesting things, because I'm not sure if you read it recently, Jace, but the new lunatic in charge of New South Wales has come up with a fantastic idea to abolish stamp duty. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, or GST on the housing. I was like, yeah, and then he's gone to bring in an annual property tax. I'm like, oh, you bastard. So it'll probably make getting in and out fast a bit more expensive. So hopefully that lunatic doesn't hang around for too long.
Mate, I tell you,
Oh, is that him calling now, Jace? He's like, hang on, Jace.
He said, look, put me on to Andy. I want to explain myself.
I need right of rebuttal.
Mate, it's an interesting one. Well, last time New South Wales did that, folks, they put in an exit tax. It was a absolute moronic move, and it actually poleaxed New South Wales for about 3 years when it came to the real estate market, Andy. You and I say this all the time. Your number one risk in investing is bloody politicians, the political environment, and everything else kind of makes a bit of sense once you get the gist of it. But politicians, they don't make sense at the best of times. But anyway, let's not end up down that rabbit hole today, Andy. Oh, interesting. I did a little Facebook Live on this one the other day. So let's put a tick in that box. There we go. Right. The regionals will fall out of favor when the cities kick back into gear. The cities have got the infrastructure. It's amazing. You guys know that. And if you're into that lifestyle, then it's the place to live. The one that I want to talk about next, Andy, is this one here, which is the gap between houses and apartments right now. Apartment living is the largest we have seen. It's at record levels. There are records everywhere. Records breaking all over the place.
New all-time high, Jason. New all-time high. There's never been so many people in the world as what there is right now.
Yeah. Well, isn't it funny? But this is an interesting one, because we saw some gaps between. Well, right now the gap some of the premiums between the house price and the apartment price across the nation is averaging at around 50%, Andy, folks. The largest gap premium between house and apartment price in Australia, Andy, I did this the other day, but a pop quiz for you. Which capital city do you reckon? Give it a guess, Andy. Chuck it in the chat, folks.
It has the largest gap between units and property.
Yes.
Or I'm going to go my home state. And my justification for that is that I think that there's actually been a little bit of a falling in some of the units in and around the city. So that's where my money would go.
Mate, you come in a close second. You come in second, but not that close. At a 75%, 74%. I'll pull the stats up in a minute. It was the ACT. Okay, between the median price of a unit in Canberra and the median price of a house in Canberra, absolutely off the charts.
Well, mate, when people talk about states and territories in Australia, we really don't include the ACT. So that's a bit of a loaded question.
But Riley said Sydney, and it was a loaded trick question. The actual dollar gap, the largest dollar gap at $470K, Andy, $470,000 dollar gap between the median unit price, the median house price is Sydney. 470,000. It's the largest in the country in dollar terms. Canberra is the largest in the country in percentage terms. But the average around the country, the other cities other than Canberra, is sitting around that sort of 50% mark. And this is interesting because we do have this kind of ebb and flow where some of this buying power goes to. Land is difficult to come by right now. And if people are in the market, they're looking for that other alternative. And it's still not easy to supply the medium density housing either, as we're rolling along. So it's an interesting moment in time. And there was a very similar moment post GFC, Andy, in time where there was a gap that was, reasonably large as well, or prior to the GFC. Sorry, not post. Post GFC, squidged it. And post prior GFC had it rather large. So, that one's interesting to keep an eye on. The regionals, people are flowing back into the cities. Great. I think that's going to be good for Melbourne. Andy, unfortunately, Melbourne has had the biggest touch up when it comes to its real estate market, when it comes to the rentals. Its values have stood up quite well, but its rentals have decreased in value.
Yeah.
That's made it difficult for folks all over the place, but I think that'll turn pretty quickly. My call right now is you'll see Melbourne in the next 12 to 18 months have a significant rent compression upswing. People move back to the city, and as soon as we get some immigration going, the number one destination in Australia by a country mile for international immigration is Melbourne. I wonder if that'll stay true post-COVID lockdowns and restrictions, Andy.
Well, the only thing that's going to really impact on that is going to be the politicians, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whether they pass these draconian laws and turn it into a dictatorship, or whether they allow free market, free country to reign. So it'll be very, very interesting. So hopefully, again, that political ambivalence by people within the state of Victoria, hopefully we see that disappear over time and people start to fight back about garbage laws being passed, and because it really will, it has the potential to really, really put the screws on Victoria. Hopefully not. I think it's ridiculous, and let's just hope that it doesn't actually get passed. But might have already happened. Actually, I'm not quite sure of the days that it was going through. But mate, we will see. But there's some opportunity there, regardless. Right, medium to long term, absolutely.
Yep. And also one of the I didn't put it up here, but one of the challenges right now, folks, is that Canada. So a lot of international students, like, technically look at a safe place to go to school, international students and university. And there's two places that, there's three, but, there's two larger places. There's Australia and there's Canada. And then there's New Zealand, considered to be very stable politically, very stable economically, and a great place to send your kids to university. Canada's crushing us. Like, they've opened earlier. and the money's flowing to Canada. So it's I'm with you, Andy. Like that draconian, backward-looking decision making could kick on for a long time, way longer than it should, and that's not great for anyone. In no matter which way you slice or dice this bloody thing.
Well, it looks like we've got destination number 2 on the study tour, Jason. Japan and then Canada.
Nice. And then we'll finish it off with New Zealand because, we need to make sure we check out New Zealand as we go. We love it. We love it. So there you go. And last but not least, this will kind of probably lead into something, Andy, that, you and I were chatting about last week, which is some inflation, which is kind of kicking on into some interest rate rises. And we had Jeff sort of say earlier, there's a bit of a move in the old interest rates. We'll see what goes on. That hasn't flowed through to the Reserve Bank yet, Andy, when it comes to interest rates and them moving, their number. They said it may be a target, 2024 maybe. We'll see what goes 2023. What's going on? Banks are independently kicking up their long-term interest rate, or not their long-term, but their fixed interest rates. But you and I touched on this last week about, banks just hedging their bets on the money that they buy, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I've got a bit to cover on this. I thought we'd dive a little bit deeper into some of the mechanics around this.
We'll kick into that a bit later. Yeah, well, mate, let's say that for later. But I do just want to impress you because, I do feel inadequate when it comes to wine. When I'm in the company of Andy Fenton, but I've dusted off the flash stuff. Samantha's Paddock, 2015 Yarra Valley.
Lovely.
It was the only wine I had left in the house, and I couldn't drink the old one. It did taste terrible. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks old. I did have a sip of it. No, I was like, that is bad. So this one tastes pretty nice, actually, Andy. So there you go,
mate. Well, that's what happens when it's freshly open. It's not several days old. But yeah. Mate, I you know what I was like, well, we don't actually have any wine here. There's no wine here. I'm like, what am I going to do with wine and wisdom? There was one bottle of wine that was like five days old that had on the first night when I got here. I'm like, nah, can't do that with Jason. No, not on my watch. He'll be able to smell it through. He'll be able to smell it through the virtual waves, and I'll be cactus. But I'm glad you're treating yourself to that. Make sure you have 2 glasses tonight, so you don't waste as much.
No, exactly. I'll make sure it gets done. Well, mate, I might throw over to you. I've got a couple of other little things in the news. The crypto world. You and I have sort of chatted about that, but why don't I kick the ball over to your neck of the woods when it comes to what's in the news for you, mate?
Mate, well, what's in the news over here? This is a bit new. This is a bit flash, isn't it?
Yes.
So I thought that we'd have. You know how I love headlines, Jace. You know how I absolutely love them, and I love it when they're consistent. Where they're consistent by the same people, right? So this is both by the Financial Review. Look at the headlines up there. 22 hours and 21 hours ago. Economists have brought forward forecasts on the first cash rate increase in 6 months to February 2023 after the RBA upgraded its inflation outlook. Economists accelerate RBA rate timing on inflation fears. And then the hour beforehand, the plunge in September quarter was steeper than the slump in the first national lockdown. The worst quarterly results in consumer spending in retail sales that we've seen in a long time.
On record.
It's a record low for the year. It's a record low for the year, Jay. So, this dovetails quite nicely into some of the things that I wanted to sort of chat about, because if we have a look at this is a fantastic slide. I really do feel like Jane Bunn, the weather girl here. It's going to be a little bit hot down in Mexico. Wonderful with our pina coladas and margaritas, which I had last night, a very spicy chili one. No, this is a great little map that's showing you global interest rates. It's almost like a heat map. And so as you can see, so where it's yellow and
global
orange,
interest rates. Oh wow.
Yeah.
that's awesome. Give me that. All right, okay. I'm nicking that a few, Fenton. You've done well. You've done well,
mate. It's case, isn't it? Copy and steal everything.
That is it, my friend.
as long as you quote the source, it's down here. So, mate, this is just gives you a representation of globally where everything's at. All right.
Yeah, wow.
So obviously we've got a few countries that are kind of sitting in there: Belarus, Russia, Turkey, Egypt, Pakistan. Which have the larger interest rates around.
Yes.
Bolivia. Now they're needed functionally by their economy in order to be able to attract dollars into them, right? Because they're such a risky bet that we need to be able to bring the money in.
Yeah.
And so it has to be priced accordingly for the risk.
Yeah.
Right. But literally, and where we're really focusing is we're having a look at Canada, 0.1. We're having a look at the United States, basically 0. Spain, a large portion of Europe, Scandinavia. And then obviously down here in Australia, and then through most of even the South Pacific and the Asian countries, mate, very, very close to 0 interest rates.
Can you just read out Japan there? I'm pretty sure I see a negative 0.1.
Negative 0.1. And Kim Jong-un's got a 0.8. So, mate, there's some staggering statistics around here.
Yeah, wow.
But we've got to contextualize everything, and we've got to put things into context, right? And this is where we really do need to watch the press, and we really do need to watch our politicians. We need to watch the RBA, and the RBA is actually holding a pretty firm stance. As you and I have talked about for a long time, 30 years, like this is the 10-year government treasuries, right? So This is 30 years worth. This is what caused prosperity basically for 40 years, right? We've had interest rates declining.
Yep.
Right. So what we need to start to do is we need to start to go, okay, well, if interest rates were to rise, what are the factors that we need to be looking at? Where are we investing? What are we going to be doing over that period of time if interest rates are going up? But I don't believe they're going to go up. But that's what we should look at. And this is what I'm going to take you through in a minute. But there's other factors that are at play here. Now, this is a comparison of the Australian versus the US labor force. So this is people working as opposed to people not working. Yeah. Now, this to me, mate, this is a staggering statistic because you, like me, we hire people. And bloody hell, if we can't find people, like we literally, it's like, where the bloody hell are you? It's the Queensland slogan.
I'm hiring now, folks. If anyone wants to be a property investment coach, an amazing property manager, or a finance broker, I'm in the market. Let me know. We want some amazing people. Anyway, Andy's looking for a great financial planner or two as well.
That's it. Where are you? And here's what's happening in Australia. So we didn't go down as bad as the RBA. Right, yeah. We didn't fall. We didn't suffer as bad as we didn't suffer as bad as the US. Right, but the US is trending in a positive direction. We're actually tipping over the edge.
Shit,
we're actually going backwards. Right, and that's a fear factor. And if you go and try and raise rates at this point in time, then you're going to make that harder because what's going to happen in businesses that have loans? People need to pay for people. You start to raise rates, you are going to exacerbate this problem, right? And you and I have talked about it ad nauseum, and I think I've got a slide to talk about this as well. It might be coming up in some of the other stuff, which I'll chat about in a tick. But ad nauseum is that there are different things that are causing inflation. We cannot just go, shit's getting more expensive, so raise interest rates. That's not how it works, ladies and gentlemen. It is a target of the RBA, but supply chain shortages, there's hundreds of reasons why things are more expensive right now than what they ever have been.
Yeah.
And it's not just standard free market. So the Reserve Bank is aware of this and they're getting a lot of pressure saying inflation, property. And then you have some idiot go, oh, let's put another tax on property. I mean, for God's sake, like if you've only got tax as the hammer, I mean, we've got a whole lot of politicians who've only got the tax hammer. I mean, you'd think that these people would have gone to school. Anyway, let me get started. But so there are different things at play. And
you don't need a degree to be a politician, Andy. Hey, you know what I mean? You need a degree to be, a doctor, an economist, an accountant. But politician, mate, fucking knock yourself out.
What's the worst that you can do? Destroy an economy?
Have a go. Yeah,
just give it a crack.
Anyway,
So when we start to look at where do we look at investing in different points in time, and this is just, I'm not saying where we're going right now, because at the moment we're definitely over here. We're definitely in forms of inflation.
Yeah.
Right. So anything food based, anything real estate based, gold, farmland, real assets. These are the things that are going to be taking off. If you start to go into potential sort of a recessionary environment, right, where they're going to start raising interest rates and things like that to try and create that recessionary feel, then you're going to start looking at hedge funds, long short funds, alternative asset classes, of which you and I have talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And sometimes property is actually an alternative asset class, just by the by. If you believe that the world is going to go through a massive price derationalization, then you've got to be in government bonds, fixed interest, and high dividend shares.
What's a derationalization, Andy? Like, explain that in basic terms. What's a derationalization?
When everything, well, it's probably the upper house and the lower house communicating, but effectively we're talking about deflationary times, right? So when the cost of property prices fall, milk prices fall, cigarette prices fall, everything starts to become cheaper.
So there's a fear in that right now where you go, well, okay, this is a temporary inflation issue just because we've got some supply chain issues, but they're short term. They're not real inflationary underpinnings. Yeah.
Yeah, and they will balance. They will balance back out. They will find their new equilibrium if they're given time.
Yes.
Right. And you might need to tweak a few things here, but these are minor policy tweaks, not major changes in the Reserve Bank cash rate.
Yeah.
Right. Because what you end up doing is, if you do stuff like that, you're talking about 10-year decisions. When you start to look at the cash rate, you're looking 10 years into the future, your 10-year government treasuries, which we were looking at in graph number 1.
Yep.
Right. So when they're making those decisions, they really got to be thinking, what's the 10-year outlook? And they're getting pressure and political opinions on the short-termism. And it's BS, and it puts a lot of pressure on them. Personally, I think the Reserve Bank is doing a pretty bang-up job at the moment because, well, just by comparison, because they did a pretty shit job coming out of the GFC.
Yeah. Righto, you like about time you got your shit together.
And so this is where another article, which was published, same place, mate, same place, within a day and a half. So Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has started removing emergency money, as he should, but it's not monetary tightening. So what we're seeing in the US at the moment is we're seeing that they're tightening. They're not putting as much money in, but they're still putting money in. Right. And here's what we need to be aware of. And
so what do you mean putting money in? They're printing money, or they like issuing government bonds? How's it going in?
So we're talking about quantitative easing. We're talking about stimulus. We're talking about injecting cash into the system via the banking system.
Yep.
Right. Printing and borrowing.
Yep.
Right. Now he's sitting there. The reason why he looks like that is because he's old. No, the reason why it looks like that is because there's a genuine concern, because this is what happens, right? In the GFC, the coloured parts are when they hit quantitative easing, right? So when the Federal Reserve started punching money into the economy in big amounts, that stimulus, quantitative easing, all of that sort of jazz, this is their stock market. Quantitatively ease, 47%, right? I don't know about you, Jace, but when there's an absolute crisis going on, I'd be pretty bloody happy just to keep the equity market doing about 5 or 10% personally.
Yeah, you'd reckon, just keep it steady as she goes, Andy. No,
let's just blow it up. Let's just just go all in. Let's go all in and see what happens. Now, this is the interesting part. They tapered. They stopped.
Yes,
and it went sideways, 2%, right, over. What are we talking? 6 months, right? Then they had to hit it again. So they hit the quantitative easing. What happened? Went up 10%. So the impact was shorter, right? The impact was shorter and it was less aggressive. But as soon as they stopped, negative 12%. And it dropped instantaneously. Then stimulated, And again, didn't do as much, stimulated, and the rest is history. So what we
And
need to understand,
it looks like when you first have your first coffee, right? This is what it looks
which is
first,
down here.
Yeah, the first copy ever, poof, and then your
11
second
o'clock.
copy not as great, and then each time afterwards it doesn't stimulate as much,
And that's when you're attacking a problem with the same utensil. This is the byproduct. But this is also one of the reasons why they cannot just simply expand interest rates. Right?
Didn't fix the underlying problem. It didn't fix the underlying economic issue, or employment issue, or attitude issue, whatever it is. It's just like, just chuck some money at it. Yep.
And that this is going to be the problem, because the stock market is a big chunk of Australia's wealth, as is the property market. And if they raise rates and start tightening too quickly, this was just when they stopped putting money in.
Yeah.
Not raising interest rates.
Yeah.
This was when they just didn't put as much in, and over here it fell 12% in a very, very short period of time. And so these are the underlying factors that need to be in the minds. And then when we look at of the Reserve Bank, and when we look at Japan, lowest interest rates in the world for the longest period of time, they've never been able to raise the rates.
Yeah.
America has not successfully risen rates since before 2009. And so when we're sitting here in Australia and we're going, well, let's raise interest rates, like, who the bloody hell do you think you are? Like, there are some significant ramifications of doing this and calling on the RBA to make short-term decisions based on short-term statistics. Is lunacy. And
so let me ask you a question, Andy. Like, when we're talking about raising interest rates, right? Who are we talking about? Because
it's a very good question, right?
So who are we talking about, right? So the banks, Westpac today, that's it. We're gonna put our fixed interest rate up. Now, that's not raising interest rates. That's changing the interest rate on one of their offerings, one of their products. So, folks listening in, again, like Andy was sort of demonstrating a moment ago, 1 hour apart. Articles in the Fin Review completely the opposite, and
it's incredible.
It's incredible. So
I can't wait to pick up the Fin Review one day, like the physical one. I swear it's going to happen one day. It's going to have their best possible outlook ever seen for Australia, and on the back page is "We're doomed." And it'll literally be printed on the opposite side of each other. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Well, I reckon you're right. So we're talking, when we're saying, okay, raise interest rates, we're talking about the RBA saying, all right, here's our 10-year target. Here's a target of what we're thinking we're trying to manage the economy to, not necessarily what the lenders are going to actually set their interest rates at, right? Because
correct.
Because probably post GFC, Andy, and I think you and I chatted about this, we chat about this stuff all the time, but post GFC, kind of decoupling from the RBA and the lenders kind of being in step. There's kind of this, all right, well, we don't really care what you've said. We're going to do this, or we're going to do that. It's not a given that the banks or the lenders will follow the RBA in rates and other things, right? At this point in time.
If the RBA were to raise rates, we would see all of the banks raise it probably by double.
Yeah.
But the RBA is holding back and going, hang on, guys. Like, just chill out.
Cat amongst the pigeons, chill it out. Yeah.
Like, we've just had a COVID bomb go off globally. Let's not overreact, because we don't know what's around the corner. And look, and I'm not trying to predict anything here, and I certainly don't want it to happen. But what happens if a worse strain came out, more virulent, and got around faster, and was even more devastating? Like, heaven forbid, touch wood, don't want it to happen. But imagine they did that, and it's so typical. They'd raise the interest rates, a couple of percentage points, and then it'd get out. And so you really need to be protecting yourself. It's small tweaks to affect long-term decision making. And there's too much noise out there at the moment to start being too speculative when it comes to interest rates. And New Zealand have kind of done it. And look, country beware. And there's nothing wrong. Like we don't have to be the first. Let's just watch what happens a little bit, because it's their economy. And but what's happening is that short-term fear is getting into that 3-year treasury, right? So the expectation that the 3-year treasury is going to be significantly more expensive, so you will pay more for that now. And so banks have the same thing, whereby they're kind of, and I reckon it's BS. I just reckon they're using it as a bit of an excuse to start to slowly adjust rates, greater profit.
Mate,
You watch it.
I reckon they are, mate. Yeah, they're making a good margin now. They're making a better margin now than they were ages ago, right?
Yeah. Why are we raising interest rates? Because the headlines are saying there's so much inflation around, interest rates are going to go up. Okay.
Boom.
Do they believe that? And we're going to close down all of our stores and go completely 100% virtual because we can provide a better customer experience. What you're going to see on the balance sheet of the banks is record profits. You get to see it. I mark my word. Unless something comes from left field, you're going to see some big profit numbers come out of the banks in the next reporting season, and It's going to be interest rate rises. It's going to be firing more people, and it will be very, very interesting.
What's real or not? I mean, I think I've got something here. I was just trying to find it, but banks closing down more, right? And again, record closing downs of actual physical locations. They're shutting them down. They're ripping out ATMs. People aren't using them. Away you go. So that's an interesting one. We've got a couple of questions in here. Jeff reckons he wants to case your qualifications. He's over dump truck driving, Andy. So he's got to copy and steal your qualification.
That's all right. I'll send you over the PDFs.
Away we go. But Allison here is like, champagne's kicked in, Andy. What the hell is a non-fungible token? Some guy lost 3 pictures of a cartoon ape and it cost him millions of bucks. NFT thieves. I don't get it. Well, it's certainly an interesting space, bro. And Allison, this is one thing. One of the next bits that I was going to sort of bring up, Andy, which might lead us into the next conversation for this evening. What's in the news for us as mere mortals when it comes to the world of investing? This world of digital value, digital assets is it's taken shape. It's been living in the sort of, the back rooms and the Dungeons and Dragons nerd world for maybe 10 years or so, maybe seriously for 5 years. But it's certainly coming of age, the world of what is a digital asset, folks. And it takes a little bit of getting your head around, Andy, and then it doesn't. And Allison, this is kind of probably for you and anyone else listening in, obviously. One of the lenders in Australia is saying, hey, listen, no problems. We're going to add crypto to our banking app. Like you can manage and see your crypto holdings in your banking app. And Andy, you might know a little bit more about this. I understand that a number of the exchanges around the world are now welcoming, at the very minimum, ETH and Bitcoin to the exchange platforms.
Yep.
Yeah, Ethereum and Bitcoin to the platforms. And also Australia has now, trying to get ahead of it. Let's hope it does, with these decentralized technologies. And so, what does it look like when Allison sort of says, hey, listen, what's this going on? What's a non-fungible token? Well, in my world, I understand that stuff as, trademarks or exclusive rights to something. Allison, if you think you might have written a book or you've done a painting, Andy, you've done a painting in the physical world, if you own the painting, then, it's yours. Now, in the digital world, how do you know you own the painting? Because everyone can copy it and put it everywhere. Well, there's like a digital recording of that painting, and now if it's used under this token, there's some sort of either contribution, monetary or whatever, into the future value contribution. So that's what it looks like. And Alison said she might have a few more drinks and do a painting tonight. It's not a bad idea, to be honest. I do know a few people chucking these non-fungible tokens on top of things, and people are on them because they're interested in the non-fungible token, not necessarily the actual underlying art. Can you add any
look,
wisdom to this?
There's a reality behind it. Now there's a trillion. I've forgotten the last number, and I'm gonna dog line. Jeff's all over it. But effectively, I see it like this: your average platform is costing you somewhere in the vicinity of $50 an average sort of trade, right? In crypto world, crypto is being traded at extraordinarily high volumes, massive, and there is some massive profit to be made in this. There are more trades now that are going on in crypto than in Australia than on the ASX. Allegedly, I haven't seen the factual data, but I've read articles in and around this. It's actually saying there's more trades being done. I'll find the data and I'll bring it to you so I can give you the real facts behind it. So everybody is getting in to this world of crypto, and in some respects, it's online gambling, right? It really is, because
it is. It totally is. What's the underlying asset? Well, yeah.
It's fun and it's themed behind it. Look, I'll have probably about 20 conversations a week in and around this sort of stuff, and I sort of say, okay, what is the tangible value that this is going to bring to the world? And I hear a myriad of bullshit, and it's all linked, right? But nobody's quite figured out exactly how it's going to work. So people are taking bets on it.
Yeah.
Right. And, there's no doubt that this technology is going to expand, and the banks need to be at least playing some sort of a role in it in order to be able to track it, because the banks are also the main reason for the banks in Australia and the banks globally is to become the payment facilitator for the globe and for the country. Right. So the payment facilitator, and bring stability to the payment cycle of the world.
Yeah.
Now, where there is such large volumes of trade going on now that is in this world, which is now unavoidable, right? It was the second largest asset class last time I looked, single asset class. Then the banks really need to be a part of it in order to be able to facilitate that trade.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to lose it, and they can't manage the payment stability for countries if a lot of the trading is not actually happening with them. So they need to be a part of it. By being part of it, they will certainly be able to add the dollars into the bank by the trading that goes on behind the scenes with them, and they'll experiment with the way that the underlying currencies are going to be used. Right. So for instantaneous transactions, it will permeate into natural banking. In what capacity? We're yet to see it. And the non-fungible tokens is an interesting one, because I always just look back at, and we went to a presentation, Jace, where he articulated really well what a non-fungible token is. And I just sit there and I go, well, a non-fungible token is a smart contract. That's it. Right. If you look at it as a smart contract, something that is a technology-based contract, which you can create anything in. You can trademark a song, and you can anchor different benefits to that. Hell, you could have it as your own personal service. I could sell a non-fungible token, which is the right to receive financial advice for X amount of dollars. And then, Jason, you get the advice from me through that non-fungible token. And then you could have, as a part of that contract, that you can sell that token to anybody for whatever price you want, as long as I get my X amount of dollars plus a share of the profit that sits over and on top. So when you start to look at then this world of non-fungible tokens and how this can spread just by thinking about it as smart contracts, it's limitless.
Yes.
But the idea of a graphic going from, you know, a couple of $100 to, you know, $1 million overnight, I honestly believe, mate, I reckon a lot of that stuff is super fatical. And that sort of stuff will die out as there becomes more normalized.
What the hell is super fatical, Andy Fenton? Like, I know you're an intelligent guy, but, you know, what the hell is super fatical?
I think I might have made up a word, mate, to be fair. It's just a fad, like a super
fad.
fad.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, super fad. Yeah, okay.
like flares and bell bottoms from your generation, mate.
Love it. I reckon you made up a great word just now. That's fucking great. If it's a real word, tell me, folks. That sounds like a Podsy scheme. Yeah, Bryce. Super fatical.
You heard it here first. Next one into the Oxford Dictionary next year, super fatical. But it really is, and until it finds its place, you're going to see some outrageous bids, because it's all right to pay for $1 million for it, but that doesn't mean it's worth $1 million. It's only worth $1 million if somebody else is going to buy it off you for that price or more. And if they don't, then it's not, right? And this is where people need to understand that it's also the wild, wild west, right? And there are people who are smart, who know how to play the system, and they're playing the system, and they're going to influence you. Like, have a look at Shiba as a coin, just went up, took off like a rocket, and made people significant amounts of money, and then all of a sudden just fell from grace. Jason, what was the difference between Shiba yesterday and Shiba today?
I don't even know. The only Shiba I know, She-Ra was when I used to watch He-Man, and then there was She-Ra. So, Andy, I wouldn't have a
clue. probably the same relevance factor. Like, and that's what I mean. That who's to say that there wasn't a handful of people, maybe investment bankers. I won't say that definitely, but it doesn't sound too far from what they might do, who have a spare, 100 million that's sitting in an account, which is on behalf of their investors. And they go, you know what? There's reasonable volume in this, that if we jumped in now and started pushing the price up and got the trade volume, we could turn that 100 million into 500 million. We could get out really, really quickly, and in a day or two, double our money.
Yep.
Bang. There's
done.
no regulation around it at the moment that's stopping that from happening. And so you can make a lot of money, but these large spikes in volatility are either from mass market manipulation or something else, right?
Yeah, pump and dumpers, Andy. There was quite a push, as often it is too late when it comes to the regulators. And it's an interesting one, Andy. The idea that when things sort of get out of the kind of weird, quirky world and into the mainstream, they have to pick up certain volume outside of legislation, outside of management or control or some mechanism that actually keeps the masses safe. Right now, I see day after day, many a scam going on in the world of this space, right? Because there's no oversight and there's no recourse. You can get in there, you can sort of say whatever you like. There's no accountability. You and I, accountable to licensing, multiple licensing in Australia for our industries. If we go and tell a client, do this or do that, we've got some recourse. In that kind of wild west, there's like, here it is. It could be a complete, absolute fabrication and lie. And then people are in and out. So that's where it's kind of like this two-edged sword. New things don't come out of the woodwork when things are over legislated and over managed. But then when the kind of I don't know, let's call it, I won't even say it, but then there's the other side of the equation where, people taking advantage of things that are unlegislated, become an issue as well. So, but yeah, I think the underlying conversation, Andy, you and I have chatted about this multiple times, right? Where, we're talking about this thing's here to stay.
Definitely.
Yeah,
100%.
this thing's here to stay. It's mainstream, and for all of us, we need to kind of make a little bit of sense of it and participate and understand in it as this as this changeover happened. Oh, Jeff, actually, we've got a Jeff coin coming soon. I love it. Jeff coin coming soon, supporting life on a beach, cocktails, bikinis, comp waves. It's going to be big. Jeff, I'm in. Let me and Andy know. Let me and Andy know.
That's it. We're in. We're in. It's going to $1. It's going to $1. We'll be gazillionaires.
I love it. But there's a few good questions here. Monica sort of talking about regulation. Do you think there'll be some sort of regulation body in the future? 100%, absolutely. And there already is some bodies, Monique, in place that kind of will step in.
Well,
they're probably
as soon as you got a bank, Jace, managing that money, and that's coming in and out of a bank account, that's regulated. The banking system is regulated. So as CBA gets in that and $10,000, I went to try and get money out. I said this the other week. But anyway, I'll say it again because I was pissed off. I went to get $20K out of the bank, and they wouldn't give me the money. I had to sign for it. I had to jump through hoops in order to get the cash.
Yeah.
And then they asked me what it was for. I said, none of your business. And they said, well, we have to ask. And I said, well, I don't have to answer. And they said, yeah, fair enough. But the reality is, and it's under anti-money laundering legislation.
Yes.
So the old big brother, don't even get me started. I'm getting myself started. I know it's at the end of the night. Let's not go into too much.
Hang on.
I'm about to go, Jason. I can't stand it. But we've got the anti-money laundering and terrorist legislation that sits behind it, basically allowing or making it mandatory for large amounts to be tracked.
Yes.
Now, when that comes from a trading platform into a bank account, it already is regulated to some degree.
Already regulated.
Right?
Yeah.
And now the bank's getting involved.
When it turns into money, fiat, like local currency, that's when kind of everything's. Somebody's paying attention, right, Andy? Like that's the thing,
Yep. And as soon as the payment systems start to open up for these sorts of things, there will be filtration points, and the filtration points will be where the regulation sits.
Yes.
And it's just trying to figure out what that looks like in the future. It's still a little bit down the track, but you can now pay for. You can get sort of, and I was having a chat with a friend the other night and sort of saying, we can get credit cards now and you can use the coin currency. It's not actually what's happening. You're not using the coin directly. It's a conversion of the coin to currency and then through Amex or whatever. Yeah. There are versions of cards where the vendor or the merchant will accept a specific type of coin, and that's slightly different. And as we see more of those mechanisms of change, then you'll see the tax bodies come in and start to regulate those exchanges as well.
There's already tax law flowing in, Andy, based on, do you own these assets in one way, shape or form? You got to pay your dollars and cents. You got to get your head around them. I'm sure, and it might be a very cool little historical, investigation where, okay, what happened when gold and silver and bronze as the the store of value transferred into fiat, which was money and paper and kind of print this thing, is there any value to it? And now it's kind of like, okay, well, there might be a bit of a change from fiat like currency to something else, which may still be interesting to have a little look at.
Well, if you want to jump into that next week, mate, I've actually got a slide that I've been meaning to talk about for some time, and it's on exactly that. It's just not in the slide deck right now, and it's a bigger conversation. But
I think that'd be a great conversation to have, mate.
Yeah, the history of money over time, and how that initial store of value has evolved.
Yes,
and there is a fundamental shift of how we're going to perceive that store of value. Crypto is going to be a big part of it. Non-fungible tokens, I honestly believe non-fungible tokens are going to be bigger than crypto in the way of, or at least initially the deployment of that technology will end up being bigger than crypto for commercial purposes. Right. So you might still have lunatics trading Shiba because I think Jeff said it had something to do with dogs in Japan, getting groomed. You buy a Shiba coin, dog in Japan gets groomed. I don't know. I don't know what Jeff's talking about. But
Jeff said that. But no, we love it, Jeff, because that is really kind of almost quite an interesting thing. And it's like what, a dog in Japan. That's kind of like a quirky thing that people are kind of doing. But will it be mainstream? Will it be something you can rely on, into the future? And you and I have talked about this. All right, there's these weird trading things, more like betting and gambling rather than kind of an understandable concept. If we're going to invest our hard-earned wealth and money into something, a property or a share or a stock market or an ASX 200 or a 100, like these things are kind of reliable, and that's not the right word, but they're kind of like, they're a bit more, they're a 95% reliability. But an NFT is like kind of maybe a 1% reliability and 99%. Fuck, let's see how this goes. So
there's a big bridge for people to understand it.
Yes.
And as people start to understand the utilization of it, we will see, that Moore's law or that exponential growth start to come in as people start to become more familiar with how they can actually be used. And in the short term, there's going to be mass volatility. Sure, there's going to be money that can be made.
Yeah.
My belief, my opinion is that it's mostly going to be made by people who have that coin to manipulate it.
Yes. That's where the manipulation can happen, right? If you've got the ability to buy and sell at mass volume, and then the kind of the regular, the folks kind of get caught up in the woohoo, it's all happening. They're the ones that get taken advantage of. And that's what regulation's for, folks. Whether you like it or not, those industries and bodies and regulators do play a good, it's an important part of our system. Sometimes they're either too lazy, too stupid, or not capable enough to fucking do their jobs properly. Anyway.
And sometimes they're all three.
All three at once. Anyway, there you go. But, mate, why don't we put a pin in that? We've got a few people keen on, well, at least Monique anyway is keen on hearing what you've got to say potentially next week on those things as well as part of your presentation. And, mate, I'm keen to see what that looks like when it comes to making decisions into the future. I'm certainly very keen now to see where I can put a few dollars for myself in this space when it comes to my portfolio. And I'm certainly well into the part of my investing career when it comes to my equity arbitrage. My safe place of storage at this point in time that I understand is real estate. And then a little bit of equity here, there, and everywhere out into the other places makes a bit of sense to be on the field, play the game a little bit, Andy. But we might put a pin in that for next week, my friend.
Well, mate, as soon as I can walk across the border, I'll be seeing you soon, brother.
I'd love that. All right, well, folks, you guys be good, be awesome. And Alison reckons we should talk about Elon Musk being world leader from here on. Well, let's put that one on the agenda for next week, folks.
Well, yes, go and watch. In the meantime, go and watch The Fifth Element, and then we can talk, Alison.
Yeah. Fifth Element. Yes, indeed. Corporate control. Or what's the other one that was around back in the day? Not Fifth Element, but it was with Harrison Ford long time ago.
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. Look at Blade Runner or Fifth Element, folks, when the corporates control the world, not governments. Anyway, there you go. Well, I think we're done and dusted, Andy. So it's a good night from him.
And it's a good night from me.
Good night, folks. You guys have an awesome weekend. Bye-bye.